And welcome, everybody, to our weekly edition of our live stream, where we give an opportunity for all of you to ask questions, and we try to bring you up to date on things that have happened during the week. We'll show some clips so that you'll know that we aren't just making this up as we go. But we're so very happy to have you join us. Pam Case, senior producer for The Huckabee Show, is with me, as she is on Fridays. She will be relaying the questions that you send in to us. Be sure to send your questions in the chat. Better yet, send us a super chat. That's even better. And by the way, there'll be moderators watching the chat so that we'll try to get as many questions in as we can. And of course, what we'd like for you to do, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and be a part of all the different things that we'll be doing. You can hit the notification bell so that we'll let you know when we're going to do these. And be sure to leave a like and share it. Especially right now is the perfect time to put the share on there with friends that you know, because you'll want them to join us for this afternoon's live stream. I want to get into something right off the bat, even as you're getting your questions in. If you've been watching the news the last couple of days, of course, the media doesn't want to talk about Afghanistan anymore, even though we ought to be, because we still have Americans stranded. So President Biden is focusing all on mandating the vaccine, saying to people, you will have to have it. Now, interestingly, if you're an illegal alien, you don't have to have it. And if you remember, supposedly, he's going to make it happen. Now, I think he's going to be jumping through a lot of legal lawsuits to do it. But before we just accept that this is going to happen, I want you to hear what he said and what the head of the CDC had to say about mandates. Watch this.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory.
There will be no nationwide mandate. I was referring to mandates by private institutions and portions of the federal government. There will be no federal mandate.
One, that's not the role of the federal government.
I don't think you'll ever see a mandating of vaccine, particularly for the general public. But you would never mandate. At least I do not think you would. I'd be pretty surprised if you mandated it for any element of the general public.
All right, memo to Dr. Fauci. Surprise! Because we now have what you said wasn't going to happen. We have what Jen Psaki said wasn't going to happen, and what the CDC director said wasn't going to happen, and what Joe Biden himself says not only wouldn't happen, but couldn't happen. Now it's happened. Mandate for the vaccine. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and how many people are going to say, no, I'm not going to have the government force me. I want to be very clear about something. I got vaccinated back in January. It was a decision that I made. I'm at the age, I'm high-risk group. So I didn't mind taking it, but it wasn't because anybody told me I had to. In consultation with my doctor and reading everything I could, decided it was the right decision for me, my wife, same thing. Most of my family, I guess all of my family that are old enough have done the same thing. But that was our decision. I don't think you have to do it, and I don't think I have any right to tell you that you have to, because I do. And quite frankly, now that I've had the vaccine, you're not a threat to me. So if you don't want it, that's okay with me. So here's something I wanted to also look at. This is yesterday, Joe Biden's press conference. Well, it really wasn't a press conference because he didn't take any questions. So to have a press conference, you got to take questions. It was his yelling into the teleprompter yet again. But he basically is blaming all the people who haven't had the vaccine. Let's take a look at this.
The path ahead, even with the Delta variant, is not nearly as bad as last winter. But what makes it incredibly more frustrating is that we have the tools to combat COVID-19, and a distinct minority of Americans, supported by a distinct minority of elected officials, are keeping us from turning the corner.
Here's first of all, the COVID issue is way worse right now than it was a year ago. Up 300% from a year ago right now. So when he says, it's better, no, it isn't actually. It's worse. The Delta variant apparently has had a lot to do with that. But you can't just say it's all because of unvaccinated people. A lot of vaccinated people have also had cases of COVID. Now, they mostly are very mild, sometimes even completely asymptomatic, and there are very few vaccinated people who have died. That's one of the reasons I think makes sense to get vaccinated, because the likelihood that you will have a severe case or die from it is even smaller and very minuscule compared to unvaccinated. But to blame people, I just find that a little bit on the weird side, because I always believe that as a public official, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And it would be so much more effective if he would just explain the value and maybe give some figures and say, but you know what, that's your choice to make, rather than, by golly, you're going to do it or you're going to get fired. People don't like that. I don't like that. And heck, I've been vaccinated. But it ain't the way it ought to be done. Here's one more clip I want to show you. This is where, this is also President Biden from yesterday. And he makes the claim that vaccinated people have to be protected from unvaccinated people. And on that, I scratched my head and I said, wait a minute. I don't need to be protected from unvaccinated people, do I? That was the point of getting the vaccination. This doesn't make any sense at all. Let's watch it.
This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you. I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week. The bottom line, we're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers.
Here's something he fails to bring into the discussion. What about the people who have had COVID and therefore have natural antibodies? According to the Israeli studies, and very extensive, people who have natural antibodies are actually far better off than people like me that have just had the vaccine who've never had COVID. And I don't want to go get COVID just to kind of boost my chances, because maybe I'll be one of the guys that didn't turn out so well. So I'm not asking to get COVID, but I'm just saying that people who've had it, why do they need to get a vaccine? They're already protected. Their natural immune systems have now made them where they're less likely to get COVID than vaccinated people. And he made no allowance for that. And I do not understand it. And I'm not sure how he'll be able to get through with that. I know we got a lot of questions coming in. Before we get to one, I want one more clip to play. This is stunning because Kamala Harris was in her own press event. She's sitting at a table not near anyone. She's been vaccinated. She's wearing a mask for reasons that make no sense to me because it's hard to understand her. So listen carefully. But what she says, now I put this in the context. Yesterday, Joe Biden says, this is not about your freedom. You don't have any freedom. You're going to get vaccinated whether you like it or not. And by golly, you're going to get fired from your job if you don't, unless you're an illegal alien or a postal union worker. And then don't worry about it because somehow you're immune. In the context of telling people that they have no choice, Kamala Harris has a little press event. And I want you to listen carefully to what she says. And I'm going to tell you the significance of her comments in light of all this after we watch.
When people are able to design their lives in a way that they can determine their own futures, we are a stronger democracy and we are a stronger nation. When people are able to make choices without government interference for themselves in terms of their well-being and the well-being of their family in consultation with whomever they may choose, we are a stronger society.
Now, if you think she's talking about vaccination, she's not. She's talking about abortion. So she's adamantly saying the government can't have anything to do with your decision. It's your decision. And the government shouldn't intervene. And if you want to have an abortion and kill your baby, that's something you ought to be able to do because it's your freedom and your autonomy and your sovereignty as a person. Somewhere the messages are disconnected here because Joe Biden just told us we're not free, we don't have sovereignty as individuals, and we don't get to make those decisions. The government is. She turns around and says the government ought to stay out of it. Two things. First of all, the left has no consistency in their own message. They don't know whether they're pro-government or anti-government. They can't figure it out. Whether the government can tell you what your health decisions are or whether they can't. Totally irrational. Here's the other thing. This is very revealing. Kamala Harris has been completely shut out of the White House. How do I know that? Because I know enough about White House operations and having dealt with a number of White House staffs through the years as a governor. The president and vice president both have communication staff, and they keep in close contact. Every day there is called the message of the day, and they coordinate that. If you have a vice president saying something totally opposite of the president, you have a total breakdown in communication. That means that the president's staff is not talking to the vice president's staff. Something is really messed up inside the White House when those two staffs not only don't coordinate, they obviously are not even talking to each other or listening to each other, because yesterday alone, less than 24 hours ago, the president and vice president gave 180-degree, diametrically opposed messages that cancel each other out. I'm waiting on somebody in the press to pick up on that and run with it. They probably won't, but that's why you tune into the live stream, because we did pick up on it. Well, speaking of picking up on something, Pam, I have a feeling some folks have been picking up on all the goings on. What do we have out there?
They have so many, and I'm just grateful for the super chats. We're going to get to one of those in just a minute. And a reminder, too, to subscribe. Many of you are already doing that for us. And if you'd like to be part of this from week to week and be notified, of course, don't forget to ring the bell, subscribe. Thank you very much. And we will get started. Got to ask Rita Schaefer early on when we first started, just simply asked what happened to freedom.
Well, some politicians apparently don't believe in it very much. America is supposed to be a place where you may make bad decisions, but at least you can make those. Look, I get it that we do at the state level. Let me be very clear. At the state level, we do mandate certain vaccinations for smallpox and measles and rubella. A host of things that you have to have if you want to go to school. Sometimes if you want to travel, you want to go to certain countries, you got to have yellow fever or dengue fever or malaria medication, or they don't let you go. So I get it that there's a limit to the things that we do. But what we're talking about is a forced mandate at a time when the federal government is trying to impose it, not the states. And the federal government doesn't really have the authority. Public health is a state function. It is not a federal function. And I know it's confusing to a lot of people, but it's an important demarcation to make, because the 10th Amendment explicitly draws a line and says the federal government can do these things, but if it's not listed in what they can do, then it's in the list of what they cannot do. And there is nothing in the Constitution that empowers the federal government to make public health decisions for you. And that's one of the complications that Biden is going to find. And he's going to go to court from half the states. Already 19 governors have indicated they're going to sue the federal government over his mandates. And so don't worry about this being enacted anytime soon, because courts are going to enjoin him, and it's not going to be able to be enforceable from the government perspective anytime soon.
We have great freedoms right here, by the way, freedoms to share.
Yeah,
you
that's
can
right.
share. We're still going to be on for several minutes if you want to be part of the discussion today. We have another super chat, this one from Kyle Cowden. Texas in the house from a Florida beach while the world burns, he says. Do you have any idea how we can effectively stop this despot pretending to be a U.S. president?
Well, it's why we have elections. Elections have consequences. It's why we need to make sure that the elections themselves have integrity and that they're absolutely accurate. We're pretty much stuck with the president unless there was some action. There are two ways to remove one. One is the 25th Amendment. That ain't going to happen, because that means that his own cabinet that he appointed would have to gather around and say he's unfit. People can muse that should happen. It isn't going to happen. It just didn't. It would take something far greater than what we've seen. And the other option is that he would be impeached by the House. Never going to happen as long as Nancy Pelosi is running the place. even if Republicans take the House next year, which I think they will, they could bring impeachment proceedings. If all the Republicans would hang together, they could even impeach him, which doesn't mean they remove him. Impeachment simply sends it to the Senate for a trial, and there is not going to be 2/3 of the Senate who would convict a sitting president. It just didn't. I mean, I say that with definitive sort of comment, but there would have to be some serious stuff. I think there is already, but serious enough to get very hardcore partisan Democrats willing to go against the president of their own party. And I'm not seeing that happen to enough to get to 2/3. So it would bring out evidence and it would bring out questions to get answered. That would be worthwhile. But as far as removing him, that's probably not going to happen until 2024.
You need to know that everyone we've heard from so far, a super chat. By the way, yet another one from Alexandria 825. Simply thank you, Mike, for all you do, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Very nice.
All right, from Alexandria. Here's a super chat for you from Birdley74. Hello, Mr. Huckabee. I'm from Alberta, Canada. I love your show. I think you're great. As bad as things are in the U.S. right now, I believe America will be the last bastion of freedom in the West.
Gosh, we hope so. And thank you to our Canadian friend. We're so glad you watch the show and enjoy it. And hey, you know what? You ought to come to Nashville and be a part of our studio audience sometime. We'd love to meet you. I always do a meet and greet with the audience after the end of the show. So maybe I'll get a chance to shake your hand and thank you in person.
All right. Do you think the Supreme Court will take the vaccine cases? This is from Jewel.
A great question. I don't think they're going to have a choice. I think they're going to have to take the case because, as I said earlier, you've already got 19 states who are going to challenge this. That's going to increase. There'll probably be 25 to 30 that will challenge it, either from the Attorney General or the governor's office. And so it's going to be hard for the court to ignore it. It's going to be hard for the court to say, we're not going to take it up, because millions and millions of citizens are going to be affected, whether it goes into effect or whether it's enjoined by a lower court. So yes, I think the court will engage in it. I don't think they can escape that responsibility.
All right, another super chat, Governor. I'm telling you, they just keep coming in. Thank you so much for being part today. I had to take all vaccines over in boot camp, and that was many years ago. I am 100% service connected and have 2 types of cancer. I choose to live what life I have the way I choose, and that's free, what I served for.
Well, and I appreciate the service that this individual has given. It's folks like you that give the rest of us our freedom. Without you, none of us are free. It's just a given. So we appreciate that. And yeah, you should be able to make decisions for your life according to what you decide. And if you decide differently than me, it's what America is supposed to be about.
Another super chat too, Gov, from David White. Question: Why haven't you got a vaccine? Answer: I need an ID to get a vaccine, but don't need one to vote. They say people don't have IDs. Really?
That's a great observation, David. We should elect you to Congress because you've got more sense than a lot of the people who are up there. And it's very true. When I took my shot, for me it was in January, yeah, I had to show them ID. Interestingly, I was at a pharmacy where I do business, and they knew me. They knew exactly who I was because I came and said, hi. Mr. Huckabee, they knew without any doubt. I didn't have to show them, but I did because that's part of the protocol. And you're right. If I got to show ID to get a shot that now Joe Biden says we got to have, and I'll get fired if I don't, why do we act like it's such a big deal to show a photo ID to vote and to put people like Biden in office? Great point. Great point.
Jerusalem 1965 says, questions, when is Biden going to take the cognitive test? Trump was made to take it.
Yeah. I'm sure his staff aren't going to let him take it. And if he does, they're probably not going to announce the results. You're right. You know, people try to make that Trump had something wrong. He took the cognitive test, and the White House physician said he could be vulgar. He could be inartful in some of the ways in which he would frame conversations. But if you were ever around him in person, the one thing you never thought was that he was not in complete command of what he was thinking and acting forthwith with what he was thinking.
Wow. I want you to know we got a super chat, €5 from Uha Havanen. I hope I said his name correctly, so that's nice to hear. Also, want to say hello to Lehigh Valley Dave, who just simply in all caps wrote, Huckabee for president. I'm just saying.
Thank you. But been there, done that. Warehouse full of T-shirts to prove it. I think I'll let someone else go there.
Okay, also want to remind folks, just a little sneak in about subscriptions today. If you get a chance, make sure you subscribe. This is how you find out about your opportunity to be one-on-one with Governor Huckabee. We try to do this every single Friday. And of course, make sure you ring the notification bell because that's how you will be notified every single time we are doing this. All right, Ralph Leah asks, and we spoke to this a little bit earlier, why are we not speaking about natural immunity more?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up a few minutes ago, because clearly, that's the most effective way to combat COVID is to have natural immunity that your body has received as a result of having had COVID. The president hadn't talked about that, nor has he said that you get an exemption for having had that, which why not? If you're better protected, maybe that's why you get all the postal workers a carve out. Have they all had COVID? Have all the illegal aliens crossing the southern border, have they all had COVID? Because if so, maybe that would explain it. But why don't all of the people who have had COVID get a pass on having to take the shot, since they probably are better off with just their natural immunities? It's a very important question to ask. Hey, I want to bring in this video. This is one from this week. Because I know we talked mostly about the vaccine today, but I don't want to forget what's happening in Afghanistan. Steve Doocy has done a wonderful job. He is a Fox News correspondent at the White House. He's not belligerent. He's not rude, but he asks the questions, quite frankly, that all of these reporters ought to be asking. One of them was that the White House has said that they have dealt with the Taliban, and the Taliban were professional and business-like. Two words I never thought I would hear ascribed to the Taliban. Here's Peter Doocy questioning Jen Psaki on those use of terms.
You're saying the Taliban is businesslike and professional. Their interior minister has an FBI wanted poster. He's got a $10 million bounty on his head. What's the business?
We are here to celebrate the return of American citizens who wanted to leave Afghanistan, of legal permanent residents, of Afghans who fought by our side, to Qatar successfully on a Qatari Airlines flight. And in order to get those people out, we had to work with some members of the Taliban to press them and to work in a business-like manner to get them out. That is what we were stating in the statement.
That's amazing to me to watch this. It's like saying, yeah, the Taliban, they're professional and they are businesslike. Hey, you know what? Tony Soprano was professional and businesslike, but he killed a bunch of people, if you ever watched The Sopranos. By the way, do not miss this weekend show. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani will be on with his personal remembrances and recollections of 9/11. Nobody was more in the middle of dealing with 9/11 than Rudy Giuliani in New York. He's one of our guests. Rick Grinnell, former State Department official, diplomat, also director of national intelligence under Donald Trump, will be with us. Sebastian Gorka, who was a national security expert in the White House, now hosts a daily radio show, and he's going to be with us with great insights. And a phenomenal country singer, Ryan Weaver, who piloted Black Hawk helicopters in Afghanistan and Iraq, who has both a brother and a brother-in-law who were killed in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. So powerful singer. He's been with us before, wonderful talent, and he'll be helping us remember 9/11. Okay, what else we got?
All right, so JDM mentions, can Huckabee just say Joe Obama? You just say it. Oh my gosh.
Joe Obama, there you go.
There you
I
go.
said it.
Demonstrate Biden has harsher words for unvaccinated Americans than he does the Taliban. Now let that sink in a little as he tells you that he has your back.
You know, that's a great point, and you're 100% correct. He's been far harsher on American tax-paying citizens for not getting a shot than he has been on the Taliban that have been holding Americans hostage behind enemy lines in Afghanistan, who never should have been held behind those enemy lines in the first place. Very well said. Great observation.
So a shout out for a super chat to Richard Owens. So big hello to him. And Carol Wong is asking, why do you think that Biden is so passionate about getting everyone vaccinated, but he could care less about Afghanistan? This really goes along with the last one. The open borders, high gas, food prices, all the things.
I think a lot of it, and I'm being very sincere here, is he wants to change the channel. And by that, I mean, he wants us not to be thinking about what a mess he made in Afghanistan, what a mess he's made of a southern border that was in pretty doggone good shape when he took office and is now an absolute crisis. He doesn't want us to be reminded of how much more we're paying in gasoline at the pump than we paid before he took office and made these boneheaded decisions to shut down our pipeline, but to give Russia one so they could pump oil to Germany and the rest of the European continent. I think it's a lot about he wants to make sure that he can stay on a message about COVID. The irony of all this is that he keeps changing his own message. Last year before the election, you remember those moments when both he and Kamala Harris said that they wouldn't trust any vaccine if Donald Trump had something to do with it. Well, Donald Trump had everything to do with it. Operation Warp Speed is what brought it to the market in record time. And for those who say, well, it wasn't properly tested, honestly, over 60 million people took the vaccine before it really got to America's marketplace. It's the most tested vaccine that we've probably ever had. So I just don't think that's an accurate statement. I'm not saying that that means you have to take it or ought to take it because of that. It still goes to your personal choice, and you should talk to your doctor, your healthcare provider, and see, does it make sense for you? And do you feel like that the risk of whatever complications may come from the vaccine are less than the risk of getting COVID and being put on a ventilator, or worse, dying from it? Pam, you and I both have talked. We've had close friends who have died from COVID.
Yes.
I've got a very dear friend who is in ICU right now. I've had 4 or 5 in the last month who have been there. Not all of them came out. So I'm aware that this is a bad disease. With some people, it absolutely wipes them out and kills them. With others, they have very minor symptoms, if any. And so it's a risk. You know, some people say, I'll take the risk. That's your choice. But if you decide to take the risk and it goes south on you, it's a booger.
Right.
It
Well,
is.
we're complex beings. We are,
Yes.
and no two people are going to respond the same way. Brandy, Texas asks, did you guys see the interview clips with Gutfeld and DJT? Classic Trump. It was great. You have to see
I
that?
did not see it, but I'm sure if Trump was on, it would be classic Trump because that's all he knows to do. No doubt about it.
All right. So T. Schaefer asks, why are postal workers exempt from the jab?
Because they're a very powerful union. And Joe Biden caters and kowtows to the unions. Same question is, why are illegal aliens crossing the southern border not being forced to take a medication that you, as an American citizen with all of your constitutional protections, are being told you're going to have to take? Most important question, I think, that deserves an answer. And I hope President Biden will try to give us one.
Mary Reimer asks, is Afghanistan not impeachment eligible?
It could be. It's certainly more impeachable than was the phone call that Donald Trump made to the president of Ukraine, which turned out to be absolutely nothing. So, yeah, it could be, but it's probably not going to happen. Certainly not as long as the Democrats are running the House.
Okay, just a couple of more. David White with a super chat. We need to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated. Are you saying the vaccine doesn't work? It's supposed to protect from COVID-19? Thanks.
No, I say the vaccine does work. It means that you're less likely to have serious complications, much less likely to actually die from COVID having had it. That's why I got it. I think the question was, do I think it doesn't work? No, I think it does. I think that's why I said earlier, if you notice what I said earlier, that if I've had the vaccine, why should I be so worked up if you don't? Because if I've had it, you really aren't a threat to me, even if you don't have it, the vaccine. So.
One more question here. What about the Texas abortion law, Gov? We're supposed to stop our lives for COVID, but do nothing about the killing of unborn babies.
Yeah, I find that there's a great irony there. I don't believe Democrats and the people on the far left when they say follow the science, because if they did, they'd follow the science to the moment of conception when a human life is created, and they wouldn't want to act like that it's nothing that 60 million human lives have died in the mother's womb since 1973. That's quite unfortunate. Speaking of which, Merrick Garland, in another stroke of irony, yesterday also had a press event, and he talked about that the Texas abortion law. Somehow he came to the conclusion it nullifies the Constitution. Watch this, and I'll comment after it.
This kind of scheme to nullify the Constitution of the United States is one that all Americans, whatever their politics or party, should fear.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, could I ask you to maybe go back and read the 5th and the 14th Amendment that says that you cannot deprive a person of life or liberty without due process? Could you please share with me what due process was given to the unborn child who was deprived of both his life and his or her liberty? Because that is constitutional. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that a woman has a right to take the life of her baby. There just isn't. It's not there. But there is something that says you cannot take the life or the liberty of a person without due process. When you can explain what due process is provided in a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, please let the rest of us know. We hope you have enjoyed our time together, and be sure to leave your questions or comment. You can email questions to us that we can get to next week. Send them to my2cents@tbn.tv. And obviously, we would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll let you know about our chats. Hit the notification bell. That way we'll let you know when we're going to be on. And we hope that you will be sure to watch a very special edition of Huckabee this weekend. In fact, I think if I showed this to you, there's no way you're going to miss the show.
This week on Huckabee, Rudy Giuliani remembers 9/11. Comedian Keith Alberstadt. Laugh along news on In Case You Missed It.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, well, it must be Dr. Fauci.
And country's Ryan Weaver honors American heroes. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central, and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central, right here on TBN.